Okay, we are live. I'm going to let the stream breathe just for a second because we were having some technical difficulties right before we hit go on the old StreamYard. I think that'll do it. Welcome in, everybody, to the Huddle Up podcast, presented as always by Mile High Huddle, powered by Overtime Media. I'm your host, Chad Jensen, and with me, as always, my partner in crime. You know him, you love him. He is Zack Kelberman. Zack, we were just talking about this right before we went live. And of course, this podcast Sunday, as per tradition of the last few weeks, is our Broncos free agent rumor mill roundup, whatever we want to call it. And in that vein, Trent Williams became part of the conversation due to the news from last week. And there were some of our great listeners out there. They didn't so much like the take you had on him being a threat or potential threat of being, a disgruntled type.
Someone didn't like my take, Chad. I am shocked. Let me just tell you right now. But yeah, it's always the contrarian, kind of point of view. I don't say things just to say things. I don't believe in BS. I just gave my honest to God thoughts on what I feel like the Broncos should do and should not do. Like I've been saying, 3rd round pick for the guy. I'm willing to take him on. I'm willing to welcome him to the team, give him the contract that he wants. Just to me, though, a 2nd round pick when you already have your tackles in place, and I got some pushback on that as well. The tackles are in place. They gave Juwan James a record-setting contract, and they have faith in Garrett Bowles for one more season under Mike Munchak. If they didn't have those guys in place, I'd be more open to it. But a 2nd round pick on top of a guy who was injured all of last season, pushed his way out of Washington, and wants an expensive contract, I'm just not jumping for that, Chad. I'd rather restock the cupboard through the draft, save some money, and put it toward a better use on the defensive side, paying Justin Simmons or paying Derek Wolfe.
We're going to talk all about the latest or what the last week or so leading up to. Of course, we're only a week away from legal tampering period actually opening up. Like, it's amazing how quickly time flies in the offseason sometimes. But so we'll touch more on it, get what some of your thoughts are, guys. But there hasn't been a whole heck of a lot. There's a few topics I want to get your thoughts on, Zack, and then we'll see what's on the minds of our great listeners here tonight. Before we get into that, though, a couple of quick matters of business. Guys, make sure you're following the show on Twitter, @HuddleUpPod. As you know, it is the best way to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening with the show in real time. And while you're at it, make sure you're also following the main account @Mile High Huddle for breaking Broncos news in real time, as well as, of course, all of our deep dive content and the draft and free agency. Make sure you're checking both of those boxes. And then when you get some time, head on over to huddleuppod.com. And let's see, might make it easy on everybody. Huddleuppod.com. There it is. Here we go. To get some swag. Get yourself a nice hat like this, get a shirt, get a hoodie, multiple options for you right now. It's an organic, easy way for you to help support the show. And maybe later we can do a share screen to show you what the latest is on the merch store. But Zack, we haven't had a chance to talk about this because the last time you and I podcasted, of course, was Thursday night for what was a phenomenal Mile High mailbag and such a great conversation and outpouring from our great listeners. But Mike Kliss actually reported it was the next day, it was Friday, that the Denver Broncos, shocker, surprise, are not expected to bring back Devontae Booker or Theo Riddick. Now, neither one of these comes as a shock, right? We're not blown away. This isn't coming out of left field. However, we weren't sure exactly how this new offensive regime of Pat Shurmur and Mike Shula viewed Booker and viewed Riddick, because they're both better receivers than they are necessarily runners between the tackles, et cetera. So, but they apparently have made their decision. They're letting them hit the bricks.
It's the right call, and it's a call that we've been kind of hinting at for months now. They were never in the Broncos' long-term plans, and Booker, he had some promise with the Broncos for one season, his rookie year, but then they drafted a couple years later Lindsey and Royce Freeman, and that spelled the end for him, and he wasn't going to survive the regime change, and he wasn't in the coach's favor. He was in the doghouse a little bit. He doesn't really have true 3-down ability, Devontae Booker. Riddick, they gave him a shot as a pass-catching back, but Kevin Hogan kind of gave him a hospital ball, and that was that. It's just, you try to work that out, but it doesn't work out, and we've been saying, restock that through the draft. Don't waste money on a Melvin Gordon. Don't waste money. Now they can't sign Austin Eckler. Don't waste money on any veterans. You have your game buster and Phillip Lindsay. Restock that through the draft. But they're getting rid of Devontae Booker and Theo Riddick. No surprise there.
You wonder what could have happened, in a little bit more of a pass-oriented running backs being used, I should say, more in the passing game with Devontae Booker. Theo Riddick, I mean, for those of you who can remember last summer, I was never a huge fan of that pickup to begin with.
Yeah.
So it's, no love lost, no skin off my teeth in terms of seeing Theo Riddick gone. And, he spent 9 months, the better part of, on the Broncos injured reserve and, cost him $2.5 million for the trouble. So we'll wish him the best. Devontae Booker, as a former fourth-round pick, you always are going to wonder what could have been with him. But it's time for him to hit the bricks. Now, let me welcome in real quick here. Buana Beast, Terry, all you guys been hanging out in the chat room. We love you. We appreciate you. Welcome. Let's see what's on Marco's mind, who jumped in on Super Chat with a $2 donation. Thanks, Marco.
Thank you, Marco.
As Ben Albright says, no Trent Williams and no offensive lineman at 15. Day 2. I haven't seen that from Benjamin Albright. I haven't heard him say that, but it doesn't surprise me. It says, it's like I said on Thursday night, and also what Zach said tonight, which is, even though I would be in hook, line, and sinker on Trent Williams, and I'd be totally down to give up a second-round pick to acquire him, the Broncos are surprisingly stoked on Garrett Bowles. And that's what Zach's trying to tell you tonight is, they have, in their minds, clarity at the tackle position, at least at the starting slots for now. And so if Albright's saying no Trent Williams at pick 15, or excuse me, in the free agency, and no offensive line or, tackle, offensive line, whatever, at pick 15, it's probably pretty safe to take that to the bank. One thing that Albright's been saying, though, Zach, pretty much all offseason long, is it's going to be a wide receiver. And in fact, one thing he said coming out of the combine is, based on what he's hearing, he wouldn't be surprised if the Denver Broncos, who are apparently in love with Henry Ruggs III, if they end up moving up to grab him because they are so covetous of what he could do for the offense.
Yeah, it's what I feel. This is a pretty fairly heavy offensive line draft class shot, especially for tackles. They can still get a really good starting caliber prospect in the second, third round. They don't have to use a first-round pick. They don't have to kick a second-round pick for Trent Williams. They can wait and get a receiver first. Albright also tweeted that they might have to move up to 11 if they want Henry Ruggs. But the point remains, they are going to look hard and heavy at a receiver at 15. Whether that's a CeeDee Lamb, Judy, Ruggs, whoever remains to be seen. I find it hard to believe they're going to kick one of those picks for Trent Williams. I find it hard to believe they're going to take a tackle in round 1. I happen to believe they're going to wait for that for day 2, shore up Drew Lock's weaponry in round 1, get yourself that burner, and go to work.
I'll be interested to see what happens if the rubber meets the road. For example, if they're sitting at pick 15 and Ruggs might be off the board, or CeeDee Lamb as well, and you've got the option of Jerry Jeudy or Tristan Wirfs, as an example, it will be really interesting to see which direction they go. It sounds like in that situation, it's going to be the receiver. Whoever the next best receiver on the board who's available, that's probably who they are going to take, because they feel like they need that to make Pat Shurmur's offense really hum and to ensure, do everything they can to hedge for Drew Lock taking that quantum leap forward in year 2. Terry Randall jumps in on Super Chat with the $10 donation. Proven as always, of course, Broncos country is not a geographic location, guys. It's a state of being. He says, International Women's Day. Oh, that's right. It is today, isn't it? Give the women in your life the love and respect they deserve, not just today, but every day. They make us go. Cassie, Christine, and Leah are rocking. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Are rocking the national hockey broadcast. Hey, that's Terry. That's very well said. Shout out, love to all our great listeners, female listeners of the Huddle Up podcast and in the MHH community, Zach.
Hi, Mom.
That's right. Yeah. What's up, Mom? Thanks again, Terry. We appreciate you, bro. Let's see. I'm trying. Oh, one other thing I wanted to talk about. Now, again, guys, there's been some buzz, like with Will Parks in some Twitter exchanges over the weekend. He mentioned that he hasn't heard from the Broncos yet, but that he does expect to hear from them once the legal tampering period opens. Now, I'm not sure why he's worried about legal tampering, because you can talk to your own free agents right now. You just can't talk to outside free agents, but he's confident he's going to hear something from them. So there's that, Zach. The idea of Will Parks, we've long talked about it now for the last, month or so, just based on what we're hearing, that he's probably going to end up elsewhere with more of a starting opportunity. And don't be surprised if it ends up being Joe Woods in Cleveland and Vance Joseph in Arizona.
This is how the conversation is going to go. Hey, Will, how much are you getting? Starters money? Okay, goodbye, good luck. That's how it's. I mean, they're not going to bring him back for anything more than what would be backup money. And Will Parks will get, if not a starting job, starting caliber money elsewhere. Just like Chad said, maybe with the Browns. He is a good player in the NFL. He has a lot of versatility, but the Broncos obviously are set with Kareem Jackson, Justin Simmons, who's going to get a big deal as well. They don't really need a highly priced backup when they can just draft one. They can develop one. They can sign one off the street. He's not a Jag. He's a little ahead of that, Will Parks, but he's not a guy you want to break the bank for either, if you're the Broncos, particularly.
Yeah, he's not quite a Jag, but he's not quite that stud. And you would hope that after 4 years, you would see that from him. And you can't exactly say that he hasn't had a modicum of stability, because I guess as a rookie, he had Wade Phillips in 2016. And then for 2 years, he had the Joe Woods, Vance Joseph regime. So maybe I'm wrong on that. And now, of course, Vic Fangio. Maybe that's why you could argue he never really took a quantum leap forward, even though he showed signs. He's hinted at it at different times. But if you couldn't turn the corner, I mean, Justin Simmons finally turned the corner last year in the contract year. We just haven't seen that authoritative step forward, Zach, from Will Parks. And then Larry jumps in on YouTube. Appreciate you, Larry, with the $5 donation. Tuning in from Richmond, Virginia. # state of being. Do we plan on Bryce Callahan, being healthy, or do we sign another starting corner in free agency? Zach, the Broncos cannot afford to rest on their laurels at the cornerback position right now. You can't count on Bryce Callahan. And that's not to say there's been any buzz saying that there's been a complication or any kind of setback in his recovery. It's just based on the fact that he missed basically the final quarter of the season in 2018 and all of last year due to that foot. And he's now had 2 surgical procedures, 3 actually, on that foot. And you just don't know what's going to happen. So to answer the question, Larry, my opinion, Zach, yes, absolutely. They are, and they absolutely have to take care of that. They need one more shoe-in guy, whether it's a Prince Amukamara, Bashad Breeland. Even bringing back Devontae Bosby would be a huge step forward compared to where they are today with only A.J. Bouye to really speak of.
Right. That's exactly why I'm right there with you, Chad. You cannot rely on Isaac Yiadom. You cannot rely on the Duke Dawsons of the world. Even if Callahan was never injured, even if he had a clean bill, 100% health, the Broncos have to sign one more cornerback or acquire one, whatever. They have to get one more cornerback in the building just to build up that depth and let them go into free agency and the draft looking to shore positions elsewhere. Amukamara can sign right now. He fits the scheme. He knows Fangio. It's a no-brainer move. He's not going to break the bank, and you shore up the secondary, and you can go attack defensive line, inside linebacker on the open market, and then go from there. So one more cornerback, I think, is coming, and it's absolutely paramount they make that move.
Robert jumps in on YouTube. He wants to know, is trading back a good option? Of course, the Broncos sitting in at pick 15 right now. I'm not a huge fan of trading, but if you're going to trade, I like trading back because you're stockpiling something. But I just don't think it's necessarily going to happen. I think they're going to try and make some hay. They already have 11 picks in this draft, and it's debatable that you could even fit 11 rookies onto this roster. So I think you'll see Elway maneuver quite a bit in this draft, even though I hope in the first round they stand pat.
Yeah, I don't believe in trading back or trading in general for the sake of trading. If they like a guy who they think they can get a couple picks back beyond 15, they should do it. But if they want a guy like like a Ruggs or a Lamb, they should move up. They have the capital this year. Not like the Broncos have, 3 or 4 or 5 picks. They have 11 other draft picks. And just for the reason Chad said, you're not going to draft all those players. And even if you do, not all those guys are going to make the 53. It's just a law of averages. So I would encourage the Broncos, if they fell in love with someone at 15, if they don't think he's going to be there, move up for him, get your guy, give up a few picks. You have enough left over. You can still get more talent in the building.
Chris Clark jumps in on YouTube. What's up, guys? Finally caught the beginning of the show. All right, good. What would it take to sign DJ Reader? Now, Reader, of course, is the former Houston Texans nose tackle, big dude, 6'3", 350 pounds. Spot Track has his value, if I'm not mistaken, Zach, somewhere around $11 million per year. So, Chris, there's your answer, probably between $11 to $13 million per year if you want DJ Reader anchoring your defensive line.
What's ironic is he's going to check in right around where Shelby Harris would sign for, about the $12 million mark annually, average annual value. And you know what? I think for what I like about Reader compared to Harris, he's a good run stuffer and a pass rusher. He can do more by playing 5 tech, by playing nose tackle. He offers a little more versatility, and a little more, I think, proven experience than Shelby Harris. But he's not going to be cheap either. They're going to have to open up the pocketbook for him. I believe they will, though, if they can get Derek Wolfe back at a fairly team-friendly rate.
Donald Chinnery, right? Yeah, Chinnery jumps in on Super Chat. Thank you, Donald, with the $5 donation.
Thank you.
That's awesome, buddy. We appreciate you. He says, I would give my firstborn to see Jerry Jeudy or Tristan Wirfs in a Broncos jersey.
I love the commitment. I don't necessarily blame you.
Stu jumps in the Hall of Fame on Super
MVP.
Chat.
Thank you, Stu.
$25 donation. Thanks, Stu. He says, wow, I made it on. Great as usual, guys. Stu, so consistent. We love you.
Good to see you.
You're in the Hall of Fame, bro.
Yes.
All right, let's see from Joey here. Joe Schobert or Nick, however you pronounce that. I still suck at that. Kwiatkowski?
Nick K, we'll call him.
Nick K, at a lower price. Zach, if you were making the decisions knowing that with one more roster move, that is cutting Joe Flacco, you're ending up with around $67 million in cap space. You still have a few of your own free agents you got to deal with, but that's still a lot of lettuce. You can make a lot of hay with that cap space. What's your answer for Joey?
I mean, all things being equal at a lower price, I'm taking Schobert. He's the better player. He would come in and be an instant 3-down starter. He would form a lethal tandem, I think, with Alexander Johnson, an inside linebacker for the long term as well. He's still fairly young. I mean, he's going to be expensive, though. I just don't – if it was up to me, I would open up the checkbook for Schobert or for Corey Littleton. I just don't think Fangio and Elway value the position that much to spend that much in terms of $11 million, $12 million bucks a year, $10 million bucks a year.
They've sent mixed signals on that topic, or at least Elway has since he became the front office guy in Denver. You know, they paid Brandon Marshall, but then they let Danny Trevathan go. They've traditionally never used a high-round premium pick with the exception of Nate Irving back in Elway's maiden class, and that was before, you know, he was the VP of football operations at that point. He wasn't even the GM. That was Brian Zanders mostly making those picks, kind of showing Elway the ropes in 2011. But Nate Irving was the highest they ever prioritized a draft pick on an off-ball linebacker. And in free agency, it's mostly been, you know, scrap heap finds, like even Brandon Marshall, even Todd Davis. Those were guys who'd been waived/cut by their original team, and the Broncos picked him up off the scrap heap, as it were. So, you know, I don't see them opening up the pocketbook, but at the same time, Zach, we might be looking at this differently because Vic Fangio, he might prioritize it completely different. He might be able to change or color John Elway's opinion on it. Between those two, I would be a lot more comfortable and confident. I would rather go out and just spend the money to get a stud like Joe Schobert in town for 4 years. You know, you've got now your starting linebacker duo lockdown for the foreseeable future than just bringing in another Jag. Like, even though he's got experience in Fangio's scheme, like, I've not seen him do anything that makes me sit up and go, he's better than Josie Jewell. Like, he's better. He can move up the depth chart. Can he bolster the depth chart? Yeah. But Matt K, you know, I'm not all that into him. Now, Manny Wise jumps in on Super Chat with a $20 donation.
Thank you, Manny.
Thanks, Manny.
Appreciate you.
Any chance the Broncos draft Ezra Cleveland from Boise State in the second or third round? I think there's a really good chance if he's there in the second round, depending on how the first round unfolds. That's about the zone in which, you know, he's going to be viable as a draft pick based on what his stock is right now. I know Eric Trickle has done some write-ups on him and likes him. Second round, third. If you could get him in the third round, it would be great value. It would depend in the second round exactly where you got him, but he's definitely on the table.
If I had my druthers and Wirfs is off the board at 15, I'm going receiver in round 1. I'm targeting offensive line in round 2. And absolutely, if they want to shore up that spot, I would target Cleveland and get him in the fold as well. Going offense back to back. I know it's unpopular in the Broncos fan base chat. A lot of fans think they're going to go cornerback or inside linebacker. I truly believe it's going to be a combination of wide receiver and offensive line, whether that's a guard, center, or tackle. So Cleveland second round, I'm all for that. Or preferably the third, like you said.
Gio Vandermark jumps in with a massive show of support
Gio.
and love on Super Chat.
Thank you.
George, you're the man. And by the way, we showed you some love. Hopefully you saw that on Mile High Huddle, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. He got himself a nice hoodie, I think a hat too, if I'm not mistaken. Either way, sent us a selfie. We shouted him out. George, you're a great member of this community. We love you. And that means the world to us, bro.
Thank you. Yes.
He says, I was listening to Dove Valley Deep Divers the other day. Eric Trickle was in favor of Frank Gore playing for us. At first, I thought he was crazy, but the more I think of it, maybe his leadership would be good for this young offense. Your thoughts? I don't hate the idea, but he's a between the tackles plotter. That's what he is at this point in his career. And he's, still an above average running back and being able to do that for you. And he brings experience in spades, and he's steadily moving up the all-time rushing ranks. I mean, the guy just keeps going. I don't hate the idea, but what's he bringing to the table really, right, Zach, that the Broncos are already missing? You can argue experience because, you got Philip Lindsay and Royce Freeman, 2 NFL seasons respectively under their belt. He does bring that, but the Broncos already have it between the tackles plotter. That's Royce Freeman today. Ostensibly, what the team needs is someone who's going to dip a foot in a bucket that they can't reach right now. And so I'm just not sure that would be the best thing. Although, I'm not going to poo-poo it. If the Broncos brought in Frank Gore to, run the rock, spell Philip Lindsay 5 to 10 touches a game, okay, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, Gore is pretty ageless, but you stole the words from me, Chad. I mean, you have that between the tackles plotter and Royce Freeman already. And B, after watching a Joe Flacco Broncos offense, I don't want this offense getting older. I want this offense getting younger, more explosive. Nothing Gore brings to the table is explosive. He's consistent. He falls forward, but you have that guy in Royce Freeman. And also, I don't think the Broncos even need that much experience. Philip Lindsay's a 2-time 1,000-yard running back, a former Pro Bowler. He's a household name in the NFL. I don't think he needs someone to lean on. He's got this. He is the number one option. He is the centerfold of this offense, I believe, with Pat Shurmur. Let him be that guy. Do not bring any Frank Gores or anyone else in the building. Let Lindsay shine. That's my opinion.
Me too. And that's why I hated that report a little over a week ago from Kliss that the Broncos are looking for a quote-unquote starter type running back in free agency. Like, let Philip Lindsay be the guy. Let him grow into that role. And I get it. He's not a 25 touches per game bell cow exactly, but I think he still can be, maybe not a bell cow, but he can still be your tip of the spear and really bring explosive ability to this offense. It's just a matter of finding the right offensive coordinator to unlock it. I mean, just look at what he did that down the stretch of his rookie year. Man, he brings so much to the table, and I think Pat Shurmur might be able to unlock that. But apparently, Zach, they're looking, or maybe it's a smokescreen. We'll see.
Yeah.
TG jumps in with a $20 donation on Super Chat. We love you, TG. You're in the Hall of Fame as well, brother. You're up there on the MHH Mount Rushmore. Appreciate you so much, TG. That's awesome, dude. He says, let's go get CeeDee Lamb and Hightower. Is it John Hightower from Boise? I think there was, it was Pro Football Focus late last week. They said keep an eye out on Hightower. They liked him as a Broncos fit. Not in the first round, but if the Broncos were to, even if they do take a wide receiver at pick 15, if they were to get CeeDee Lamb, as TG wants here, at pick 15, you could still double up and get Hightower, who, he's like 4.43 speed, so not a blazer, but Zach, he's faster than Cortland Sutton, and if you got him in tandem with a guy like CeeDee Lamb, man, you're really bringing an infusion of talent to this offense for Drew Lock.
I don't know that I double up back-to-back like the first and second round, but I have no problem first and third, second and fourth, whatever combination. The Broncos need probably 2, young blood infusions at wide receiver, 2 speedsters. And in terms of CeeDee Lamb, that's my number 2 receiver in this class behind Henry Ruggs. If not Ruggs at 15, if Lamb's on the board, I'm pulling the trigger. Get your guy. I think Drew Lock would love throwing him the ball. I'm with TJ on that one.
Sleek Trail wants to know if the Broncos will be interested in picking up anyone from the XFL. If so, who? Sleek Trail, I'd be lying to you, dude, if I told you that I'm following every game of the XFL. I haven't heard of anyone specifically, but what I can tell you is you can bet your bottom dollar that they are looking at the XFL, just like they did with the AAF. They had 2 players they signed out of the AAF, Mike Purcell and Devontae Bosby. Both guys went on to carve out starter roles. Now, Bosby had only lasted 2 weeks before he got hurt, but Mike Purcell, even though he had previous NFL experience, so did Bosby. The Broncos, those are 2 success stories for fledgling pro leagues out there that the Broncos can kind of use as a scouting farm system, so to speak. And again, no specific names that we're aware of at this stage, but Zach, absolutely they're gonna keep an eye on that film.
Yeah, and I can't lie and say I'm a big XFL fan this season, but I think one name, and it's always the popular name, which is a quarterback, PJ Walker from the Houston Roughnecks, I believe it is. If the Broncos want to back up, they're in that market for an experienced guy. He is the best the XFL has to offer. I don't know what that's saying, but he's lit up the tape this young season so far, and the Broncos want experienced signal caller, at least bring him in for a camp look. I think that's the guy they would at least sniff around.
Edward jumps in on Super Chat, one of our superstars, with a massive donation.
Thank you, Edward.
Thanks, Edward.
Wow.
Appreciate you, bro. And by the way, you got to let us know when you get your swag, update your profile pic. That's how we'll know for sure. And of course, as always, we invite you to send us in a selfie. We'll share it out and give you some love on social media. He says, who would you rather get at middle linebacker, Corey Littleton or Joe Schobert? Can't wait for my shirt. Keep up the good work, guys. Appreciate you, Ed. I personally like Schobert better than Littleton, but I think there are people that would disagree with me. Like I think Eric likes Littleton a little bit more. And Zach, I know you're a big fan of Littleton.
I am. They're really kind of similar players. I would give the edge to Schobert incrementally. I think he's a little better. He's a little more experienced. He's a 3-down guy, good against the run as well. But I'm not going to cry at all if Littleton's the guy that the Broncos open up the checkbook for him. He would come in for, I believe, a few pennies cheaper than Schobert, and he would be a starter, instant day one contributor aside Alexander Johnson. But gun to my head, I'm going Schobert over Littleton.
Speaking of Women's Day, Miss Christie jumps in, flexing, showing that support on Super Chat. Thank you, Christie.
Thank you, Christie.
Also, Hall of Fame. We're running out of Mount Rushmores, but I think we've hit 3, maybe 4 on Mount Rushmore already. And Christie, of course, you're right up there with them. Appreciate you so much. Good to see you in the chat. And also, she was flexing her hoodie over social media over the weekend.
Yep.
All right, let's see what else we got here. Mehmet, no one is talking about Kendall Fuller from KC. Do you think we can sign him in free agency? Can? Yes. Will?
No.
I like Bashaud Breeland, honestly, more than I do Kendall Fuller, and I think he's probably ends up being cheaper.
I like Amukamara over both, and he can come in right now and he knows the system. So, I mean, just like Chad said, they can. I'm sure they've given it consideration, but will they? I find that hard to believe. If there's any free agent corner we keep pounding the table for, it's Amukamara. It's just a no-brainer fit.
James Dean jumps in on Super Chat. Appreciate you, James, one of our superstars.
Thank you, James.
Really active, especially the last month or so. You've been super consistent, James. He says, I put a picture up finally. Looked at the cap. We can get cornerback in the draft or get Amukamara and Schobert if we only tag Simmons. I expect all to happen. And for what it's worth, James, I'm sure you saw this too, Zach. We might have talked about this on the pod. I can't remember if we did, but there was a fan that was kind of excited when AJ Bouye signed or was acquired last week. And Amukamara got tagged on Twitter about next move is Amukamara coming to the Broncos, reuniting with Vic Fangio, whatever. And he quote tweeted it with the eyeballs, right? Like, hey, I'm checking this out. I'm monitoring this situation. So I think Amukamara has it's no secret. He would like to land in Denver, but Zach, and be reunited with Fangio. But Zach, it's going to have to make some financial sense for him. And I think you offer him somewhere between $7 to $9 million, you might be able to get that done.
I mean, here's the beauty part, though. For once, the Broncos have enough cap room where they can sign Justin Simmons to a long-term deal and get Schobert and get Amukamara. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It doesn't have to be contingent on Simmons being franchise tagged. If he signs a long-term deal, the Broncos will have plenty left over to bring in Schobert if they want. They can bring in Amukamara. I think they'd be pretty capped there to leave some rainy day money left over, but they have the capital to add a lot of star power this offseason. That's why I think Elway's going to be pretty active the next couple of weeks.
West Side Philly jumps in on Super Chat with a $20 donation. Wow. Thank you, my friend. He says, had to beg my boss for a late lunch to catch the pod so I could donate.
That's
wow.
Awesome. Thank you
that
so
means
much.
the world to us, bro. Who do you guys think are the wideouts this year that if they're available at 15, you can't pass up? All right, Zach, I'm gonna remove from the equation this nagging philosophy of mine that the Broncos should not take a wide receiver in the first round because it's such a deep class. It just doesn't feel like that's realistically the way it's going to go. So let's talk about the way the wind is blowing, right? We'll lick our thumb, put it in the air. Which way is the wind blowing? It's wide receiver. And to answer West Side Philly's question here, my number one guy is CeeDee Lamb. Not to take anything away from Ruggs, but for me, it goes Lamb, Ruggs, Judy. And depending on who's on and off the board at that point, I'd be happy with either of those three at pick 15.
But are any of those guys, are they must takes for me? And then I look at it individually. Judy's not to me. CeeDee Lamb, as much as I love him, he's not a must take. It like if Wirfs was on the board or Chase Young fell or if Isaiah Simmons fell, I wouldn't take a receiver over those guys. There's no like Calvin Johnson, future Hall of Famer in this draft class. But if no one else is on the board, those receivers are on the board, Ruggs or Lamb to me are must takes considering what the Broncos need and what they bring to the table. They would instantly mesh and they would be Drew Lock's best friend on the field. It's just as simple as that.
You think Megatron's headed for the Hall of Fame?
I think he has a pretty good case. I mean, he was pretty dominant in his career. It just sucks that he was saddled with the Lions for the entirety of it.
It's hard to argue that during his time in the league, he wasn't the best wide receiver, especially the second half, actually. He was great from the drop, but did he change the game? I think he kind of reimagined what red zone jump balls and the fade. Seeing what he could do. That's a conversation for another time, but it is interesting. Is Megatron a Hall of Famer? Because multiple Pro Bowls, a lot of individual accolades, very little team success. I don't think he ends up in the Hall. Jonathan jumps in with a $5 donation on Super Chat. Thank you, John. Appreciate you, bro. Showing some love there. All right, let's see what else we got here. Bear with us here, guys. Rick wants to know on Facebook, we haven't taken any Facebook questions yet today. If Joe Flacco doesn't pass his physical, are the Broncos able to cut him? Yeah, you can still cut him. You're just going to end up with having to pay what they call an injury settlement.
Right.
So the Broncos are, hoping that doesn't happen. But even if it does and they have to pay him an injury settlement, that's the price of doing business to free up $10 million on your cap this year and move on from that failed experiment and stay in the cool, new, fresh, exciting, 4-1 Drew Lock world.
Yeah, if an injury settlement does come about, it's like a severance package. They'll pay him some money to go away. And like just Chad mentioned, it's not just the on-field personnel move the Broncos would make it for. It's to get that bad juju, those bad vibes out of the building and cleanse yourself from the old way of doing business. The old quarterbacks of the Broncos are in a new era and a new age right now.
Terry Randall jumps back in on Super Chat. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Terry.
Why so much noise about Joe Thuney? Hashtag football priest. Hashtag state of being. It's picked up a little bit of steam. I'll acknowledge. Joe Thuney ends up as a Bronco if and only if Mike Munchak is pounding the table for him, because the Broncos already have a starting left guard. His name's Dalton Reisner. They already have a guy that they quote unquote love at right guard in Eli Wilkinson. So unless Mike Munchak was literally pounding the table to Elway saying, this is the guy we need for the O-line to go to the next level, I just don't see it happening because he's going to command top dollar. He's going to command more than it would have cost you to keep Ronald Leary this year.
Right. Yeah, a lot would depend on McGovern's situation as well. We know Leary's out the door. One guy from New England, though, not getting a lot of headlines, is Ted Karras. He was the backup center after Andrews was diagnosed with blood clots. He's going to be a free agent as well. He'll be a little cheaper than Thuney. He can be an option if McGovern walks. So keep in mind, Ted Karras also, along with Joe Thuney, as two options in free agency for Denver. I don't think Thuney, though, isn't like Chad just mentioned. He's going to be too highly priced. The Broncos won't go there, I think, this offseason.
James Moss jumps in on Super Chat. Thank you, James.
Thank you, James.
Playing devil's advocate. If we get all these players and use all our money and we lose, does Fangio last another year? I think, James, it would depend entirely on how bad it was. Like if you're talking similar to this past season where there was so many narrow failures, could have gone either way. They're one game under 500. I think he still gets one more year. But if it's a Vance Joseph level, 5-11, 4-12, 3-13, he's probably gone, and it doesn't speak well to what the future might hold for Elway, even though we're both of the opinion that Elway is pretty much sacrosanct until and unless a new ownership group comes in.
A lot would depend on Drew Lock's progress or lack thereof as well.
True.
They're not going to want to fire Fangio because that would mean revamping the entire offensive coaching staff once again. So I think if Lock develops well, but the Broncos have some injury, bad luck, or the ball doesn't bounce their way, I think Fangio gets one more year with Drew Lock at the helm. So I think he's pretty safe overall. And I don't think the Broncos are going to even have to worry about that. They're going to have, I think, a really good season in 2020.
Man, the comment stream is moving fast tonight. It's so good to see everybody contributing to the conversation. James jumps back in. Yep, love the emojis. It is family friendly on the Huddle Up podcast. Yeah, there you go, bro. I'm not even going to read that, but you know what makes us smile, makes us laugh. Appreciate you, brother.
It's the Huddle Up pod after dark.
That's right. That's right. All right, let's see what else we've got from people not on Super Chat. Christy wants to know about Denzel Mims. This is a guy that is borderline first round, Denzel Mims. Now, for those of you who don't know, he's the Baylor wideout, blazed up at the combine, fast. I mean, if the Broncos traded back in the first round, Zach, to the back end and grabbed Denzel Mims at like pick 28, 29, 30, 31, something like that, it'd be a great move. Like he's getting close. And that's another reason why I'm like, hey, if you're the Broncos, grab that offensive lineman you can't get elsewhere at pick 15 and, trade one of your third round picks to move up in the second round and get Denzel Mims. Like he is a stud, Zach.
I agree. I don't like him at 15. I think that's a little too rich for me. But if they want to trade back into the 20s, they want to do like they did last year with Devin Bush and Noah Fant, they want to move back for their guy. He's definitely an option, especially how the receiver board plays out. Love his playmaking potential. Love his upside. He would be just a great compliment to Courtland Sutton. Great long-term pairing with Drew Lock. I would love him, just not at 15, though. Things would have to break a certain way. Wirfs would have to be gone. Lamb and Ruggs and Judy would have to be gone. They want to trade down, though, and get Mims. I am not complaining about that in the least.
Larry jumps back in. He says, if somehow we bring back Chris Harris, he has to go to the slot because he's shown he is a liability on the outside. Then who would we have on the other side of Bouye? It would look like this, Larry. It would be depending on, let's just assume for the sake of this conversation, Callahan comes back to form. You would have Chris Harris Jr. as your number 2 corner in base on first and second down, Bouye number 1. And then on sub packages, third down, whatever passing situations, one of the great versatile options and one of the reasons why the Broncos were excited to have both Callahan and Harris is you can rotate them both from the outside to the inside. I'm with you, though. As a number 2 corner, I'm not worried about him playing on the outside. It was as the number 1 who has to follow the number 1 receiver. That's where he ended up being, he fell short of the mark. Let's just put it that way. But he proved in the first 8 years of his career, Zach, that playing the number 2 spot and rotating in and out of that from the slot, that's his forte.
I would say Chris Harris Jr. was exposed as an outside cornerback, Chad. There's no way around it. He was getting beat almost every single game, and it showed. I mean, he wants to be paid like a number 1 cornerback. He wasn't performing like a number 1 cornerback. That's part of the job is shadowing coverage and following top receivers, and whether it was Tyreek Hill or anybody else, they were whipping him down the field. I mean, he was 2 and 3 steps behind. That is why the Broncos are going to move on. That's why they're going younger at that position with Bouye, with Callahan, if they bring back Bosby, just guys who have – I think a little more boundary experience. They can hang with opposing receivers and Fangio's scheme with, bracketing with Simmons and the safeties. They can do a lot of things there. That's why Harris, so to me, is not worth what he's going to get on the open market because he's not what he thinks he is.
Yordi jumps in and wants to know on YouTube, what do you guys think it would cost the Broncos to trade up with the Browns or the Jets for Henry Ruggs? Well, I'll tell you, it will cost you this year's first, next year's first, all 3 of your third-round picks this year, maybe even a third-round pick next year to equal the value of that on the draft chart. So are you willing to sell the farm to get Henry Ruggs? I'm not.
No. Yeah, there's only one position. Chad and I always mention that you'd sell the farm for him. That's a quarterback. And the Broncos thankfully don't need a quarterback this offseason. Ruggs, as good as he is, Lamb, as good as he is, you're not going to sell the farm for those players. They're going to let them fall into their laps if they do. And if they don't, they'll explore another avenue.
Drake wants to know why the Broncos traded up to draft Juwan Winfrey last year. Well, he's a guy, of course, from CU. He was at the local pro day the Broncos did. And, he had some guys pulling for him from the inside, including Philip Lindsay. But he was just a guy that they liked, and they felt like if they waited till the seventh round, he wasn't going to be there. Now, surprisingly, even though he made the 53 last year, he got next to 0 looks on offense for whatever reason. And there were times there, especially down the stretch, where you could have rotated him in and gotten him some snaps. But, I think he's a guy that, the book's not out on him yet. He still has an opportunity to kind of stake his claim with this team. But depending on how many wide receivers they draft or bring into the equation this year, like, he's going to be on notice. There's a chance, he could be edged off the roster and onto practice squad duty type thing. So I think he's a guy though, Zach, that just kind of has that playmaker gene, where when the chips are down, he's a guy that finds a way to make some hay.
I do think it can be between him, Patrick, and Hamilton battling for 2 spots in the 53 this summer, Chad. There's going to be so much competition, barring what the Broncos do in the draft at that spot. He has decent talent as a possession guy, as a red zone target, not a speedster by any means. I think his long-term career upside is that of a number 4 guy, number 5 guy. You can always have those guys on the roster. They're valuable, but he's never going to be a starter. He's never going to be a star, an explosive guy. He is what he is. The Broncos took a shot as a project, and they're kind of developing that and hoping that their labor pays off.
Dan wants to know on YouTube, do you think the Broncos could sign Jordan Phillips from the Bills? Yes, absolutely. That's something that Eric Trickle's been advocating for dating back to like December, dude. Like, Jordan Phillips is a guy you could bring in second, maybe third wave, probably second wave, who can help push that pocket from the inside a little bit, stuff the run. Like, that's a good example, Phillips, of what Elway and Fangio said at the Combine about how deep this free agent class is on the defensive line, Zach.
He's a lot like Shelby Harris in his pocket pushing ability, and he's a very similar player, and I think he costs a lot less than Shelby Harris. So if the Broncos strike out on DJ Reader and they want a secondary option, I have no problem. That's probably the number 2 guy I would want on the open market, Chad, is Jordan Phillips. Experience in the 3-4, young, plenty of upside, can push the pocket, can stop the run. That's a great plan B if they miss out on DJ Reader.
Brian, one of our Super Chat superstars, jumps in
Thank
with
you,
a $10 donation, showing
Appreciate
some love.
you.
Appreciate you, Bri. Buona Beast wants to know, the mayor of the community there on YouTube wants to know, has Jalen Johnson earned his way into the top 2 rounds for sure? Didn't he just wasn't there an injury thing from the Combine, right, Zach?
I believe, yeah. There was something.
He might end up going late day 2, so round 3 because of that. But all things being equal, if he's 100% healthy and didn't have that concern, he's probably a second round pick.
Yeah, I'm not going to say top, second round for sure, but I think he is locked into being a day 2 pick, whether that's a second or third round. He will be off the board in day 2. Good prospect, but that injury is definitely something to monitor.
Let's see here. Juan wants to know on YouTube, what do you guys think about Danny Shelton, Devondre Campbell, Blake Martinez, Ronald Darby, or Trey Waynes for the Broncos? As always, great job. Thanks, Juan.
Thank you, Juan.
I like the idea of Danny Shelton. He's a guy that I know our Mile High Huddle analyst Thomas Hall was big on Danny Shelton this time last year. Didn't happen. Blake Martinez, from what I've heard, Zach, is looking to get paid, and I'm not sure I like him anywhere close enough for this scheme to justify the money he's apparently looking for. Ronald Darby's interesting to me. I'm not a fan of Trey Waynes, but Ronald Darby, even though imperfect, I could see him fitting in Fangio's scheme.
The only one from this list that I would like, and this is no disrespect to you, Juan, is Ronald Darby. Trey Waynes, to me, was a massive bust with the Vikings, and the other players are just retread guys the Broncos can replace either through the draft or signing, as an alternative somewhere else. So I wouldn't mind, though, Ronald Darby.
Let's give some love to our Periscope viewers. Those of you watching on Twitter, Ted FX jumps in, wants to know, hey, aren't the Broncos going young? If so, why sign Prince Amukamara? Well, Ted, the issue here is, first of all, it's still a massive need. And the cornerbacks are asked to do a lot in Fangio's scheme. It ends up benefiting them. Even Will Parks was talking about this on social media over the weekend. Very interesting, some of his comments, by the way. Guys, go check it out. But he was talking about how Fangio's defense, you've heard people, I've heard people anyway, say it's defensive line friendly. It's off-ball linebacker friendly. It's cornerback friendly. It's safety friendly. It's basically defense friendly. And he explains that on Twitter does Will Parks. But the bottom line, though, is it also is very reliant on the corners. And at this stage, you have one proven guy under contract. Well, going to be under contract in AJ Bouye. So it's a need until it's not a need. And until it's not a need, you just don't look that gift horse in the mouth. And Prince Amukamara, Zach, he hasn't shown signs, despite his age, former first-round pick, he hasn't shown signs of going off a cliff yet.
Yeah, he's only going to be 31 in June. That's not exactly ancient. And you're not signing him to be your number one guy. You're not signing him to be the superstar. He'd be your number 3 cornerback in a perfect world. And that's not bad for his talent ability. And it's also his familiarity with the Broncos scheme. He can step in. There's no learning curve. There's no lag. He come in right away from day one and get the playbook down. And not only that, help teach the incoming members of the Broncos, the rookies or the other secondary members, the defense better. So there's no downside to a Amukamara signing. I love it. I'm all for it. And he would be much cheaper than some of the other alternatives, maybe including Ronald Darby.
All right, guys, we got to start winding it down and get out of here shortly. So let me jump to, I want to make sure we haven't missed anybody who's jumped in on Super Chat. That is a grievous sin that even the football priests might not be able to get absolution from, the football gods. Edward jumps back in, wants to know with a $10 donation. Thank you, Edward.
Thank you, Edward.
He says, Chiefs are a one-hit wonder, just like the 2017 Eagles. The Broncos will take their place back on top of the AFC West next year. Denver Broncos for life. Hey, man, you know, you're at the wishing well. You flick a penny into the water and hope for, you know, the Chiefs to take a nosedive like the Eagles. But empirical evidence, unfortunately, Edward, doesn't point in that direction. They were in the AFC title game in 2018, barely lost by a comedy of razor-thin factors, won it all this year. It will be interesting, though, Zach. Here's what I'll say. It will be interesting to see how that front office juggles the massive contract demands that it's going to take to pay Patrick Mahomes with roster building and maintaining a competitive or championship caliber roster. That remains to be seen.
The thing is, though, Mahomes is so good that he can make up for deficiencies elsewhere. You can let go of a cornerback or a defensive lineman or whatever as long as you have Patrick Mahomes. And I love the optimism surrounding the Broncos. I do not think for the least that the Chiefs are a one-hit wonder. They're going to be around for a while. Mahomes is going to be around for a while. Best quarterback in the NFL, who just admitted he did not even learn how to read defenses until last season. That's a scary thought for the rest of the NFL. He's probably only going to get even better. So the Broncos can be competitive. They can take them down. But until they do, that is the Chiefs division and the Chiefs, I think, league.
One of our Super Chat superstars, Discount Audio and Wheels, DA Dub, jumps in. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
How do you feel about the possible London game and Vegas twice this year? Can't wait to take it to the AFC West this season with Locke and the Young Guns. That last point, I'm so excited about this season. I agree with you, DAW. Like, it's going to be fun to see how this season opens up with the excitement, Drew Locke and the young weapons and a new offensive coordinator. It's going to be fun. But as for the London game and 2 Vegas games, you know, it's closer for Broncos fans that are located in Denver to get to Vegas than it is trying to get to Oakland, right? And the London game, Zach, I'm not crazy about it, but I know there's a huge portion, there's a huge collective of Broncos fans in Broncos country in the United Kingdom, in Europe. And so for those people, I'm happy for them. And if you, like they're planning on doing, if you can turn it into an East Coast game and then you go from the East Coast across the pond to the UK, mitigate some of the jet lag, mitigate some of the unfair advantage of having to travel to another continent, you know, I can live with it. But because of that, I don't love it. I think it puts an unfair onus on the teams asked to make that trip. But as you said, Zach, that's mitigated usually by a bye week the next week.
Yeah, I mean, so hopefully that game, the London game, would be in the middle of the season, not week 4 or week 5. I want the Broncos by in week 8, week 9, week 10. I'm not crazy about it, but it's good exposure for the Broncos for being on a national stage, and it brings more awareness to the team and Fangio and Drew Lock. In terms of Vegas, though, I'm no geographic expert, but I believe the flight to Oakland is more than the flight to Vegas, so it will be a very small factor for Denver, and pretty exciting to open up that stadium next year, playing your rival, and hopefully you get to take him down. Not big on the London game, but Vegas is fine for me.
All right, guys. A couple more, and then we got to get out of here. Terry jumps back in on Super Chat. Thanks, Terry.
Please.
If AJ Epinesa drops into the second round, how far do you trade up for him, or do you just wait? I mean, it depends on how confident you are he can play inside, if he can play 5-tech defensive end. Because as a stand-up edge rusher, I mean, the Broncos can always use depth, don't get me wrong. But you have Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. Do you really need to be going after another edge? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I could be persuaded on it, but I don't love the idea of taking any edge in the top three rounds this year. But Epinesa is a first-round caliber guy. If he dropped into the second round, I could understand if the Broncos moved up and grabbed him, but I just don't think that's going to happen.
I mean, let's assume the Broncos take a receiver in round 1. In round 2, you still need a tackle, still need a guard, still need a center, still need a running back, still need a cornerback, a safety, inside linebacker, defensive lineman. The Broncos have needs all over the board. To trade up for an edge rusher when they have 2 of the best in the NFL makes no sense to me. As good as he is and as good value pick as that would be in the second round, I am not giving up capital for an outside linebacker when the Broncos have needs all over the place.
Jeff jumps in on Super Chat with the $5 donation. Thanks,
Thank you,
Jeff, my brother. By the way, I really don't think that was a Cowboys logo on Derek Wolf's shirt, for what it's worth. Jeff hit me up on Twitter. I don't know if you were included. But
what was this?
Well, earlier today, it was Jeff Cohen hit me up on Twitter saying there was a picture, I think Derek Wolf's wife posted of him and his child or whatever, and it kind of looked like a Cowboy star on his shirt. And he's like, why is he wearing a Cowboy shirt? What's going on here? But you'll have to go look at it. I quote tweeted it. I believe you can find Jeff. But either way, I think it's something that looks similar to the Cowboy star, not quite the actual Cowboy star. I heard some people say maybe it's the rock star logo or some other. Anyway, but check it out. Now, Jeff says here, if Drew Lock becomes special, you guys deserve credit for calling it out pre-draft. #footballpriest. Hey, man, we'll always take credit for things that we see coming, especially in the draft. You know, that's not our strong suit. But we've been telling you since before the draft last year, Drew Lock, franchise caliber tools. It's just a matter of putting it all together. And the one thing I continue to remind everybody that surprised me the most about his rookie campaign was how quickly he showed signs of progress over some of the areas of weakness when he was a draft prospect after being in exile for 10 weeks. It blew my mind. And to me, that was the most encouraging aspect of it, is that this dude is attacking life as a pro. You don't have to worry about him playing the Xbox and, whatever, right? Paxton Lynch, foibles, the lessons learned there. Drew Lock is legit.
Yeah, and, we're not the only ones that were high on Drew Lock in the pre-draft process. There's a reason why he was mocked to the Broncos in the first round, that last year. The thing is, though, Chad and I think more than most other people, we never wavered on Lock as a prospect for the reason he just mentioned. Even during the preseason and the early regular season and him falling behind his development and being behind Kevin Hogan on the depth chart, we never wavered. We always thought he had franchise caliber tools, and he showed that in the regular season when the chips were down and when the games counted for real. So, yeah, he's going to be, I think, the Broncos' long-term quarterback, and I think he'll prove in 2020 he is the decade-long option, the first franchise quarterback they have since Peyton Manning.
All right, guys. Brian jumps back in on Super Chat. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Zach, Ruggs is your number one. You crazy, man. Lamb, Judy, then Ruggs. Still worried Ruggs is a bust. Hope the Raiders pick him. LOL. I get that, Zach, that people are worried he's going to be the next Darius Hayward-Bay because the only thing people seem to be focusing on with him is the speed. But I'm telling you right now, that's not the book on Ruggs.
It's like saying Tyreek Hill is just a speed demon when so few people realize his catch radius greatly improved last year. And if he can do it, Henry Ruggs certainly has the capability in the NFL to be an all-around receiver. I'm not worried about the bust factor, but I would not put Judy ahead of him either. Lamb, I could see, but Henry Ruggs, he has the big hands. He's fast as all get out, and he's an all-around receiver who's going to fit in this Broncos offense if drafted like a glove.
Larry jumps in with a $5 donation again. Thanks, Larry.
Thank you, Larry.
He says, with Will Parks likely out, I would love for the Broncos to draft Jalen Elliott from Notre Dame and hometown high school LC Bird. I mean, yeah, it depends on where in the draft. Yeah. I'll be lying to you, though, Larry. I'm not the most versed on either one of those prospects. So maybe check in with Nick and Carl. Will be up next on Tuesday night. They can talk some draft with you. Jordan jumps in. Holy smokes, $25 donation.
Thank you, Jordan.
Appreciate you, bro. I've seen Isaiah Simmons mocked to the 9th spot. Do you think they would move up the Broncos for Simmons at 9? He seems like a Fangio guy. I think it would be a conversation taking place. I do. If he's getting close to 10 and in that zone, absolutely.
Yeah, they're going to make some calls for sure to see what it would take. And that's really the only guy, Chad, I'd go in the top 10 for, trade up for, and give up all that capital for. Simmons, he's just a 3-down game changer. He would fit in this defense with Fangio so well. Ultimately, I don't see that happening. I think the Broncos will let the board fall where it does and just pick a player from there. But he gets to 9-10, the Broncos are going to make some phone calls for sure.
Desmond Ray jumps in on Super Chat.
Thank you, Desmond.
$5 donation. Wow, thanks, Desmond. Appreciate you. That means a lot. Thank you, my friend. It's good to see you.
Hopefully not related to Shane.
You're getting some love right now, my friend. We love you. Appreciate you. Means the world to us. All right, guys, let me see what else we got here. We might call it for tonight. Yeah, that about does it. The other thing I wanted to talk about, Zach, and then we'll get out of here, is because this is the Roundup, the Rumor Mill Roundup, is Pro Football Talk. We touched on it earlier, but the idea of Mike Remmers coming here as a backup offensive tackle, they like the fit because of his past experience with Pat Shurmur. What are your thoughts on bringing him in as a swing guy that can play tackle and guard?
I mean, Von Miller knows him well because he's owned him throughout his career, especially in the Super Bowl with the Panthers. I mean, he'd be like having a Donald Stevenson as your swing guy. Do you really want to chance that? Do you really want to spend money on that guy when he can come into the game and be no better than Garrett Bowles, can allow sacks and holding penalties? I'd still rather the Broncos draft that guy, Chad. Draft 2, 3, 4 offensive linemen. Can't ever have too many. They have holes all over the place. I'm not a Remmers fan. I would take that money they're going to spend on him and put it elsewhere.
All right, guys, that's got to do it for today's episode of the Huddle Up podcast. As always, thanks to each and every one of you for joining us on the show, contributing to the conversation live. We love it. It's something we look forward to each and every day. A mile-high salute to our Super Chat superstars, bringing the thunder tonight. We love you guys. Make sure you're following the show on Twitter at Huddle Up Pod. And then don't forget also, guys, to follow Mile High Huddle on Twitter. Pretty easy to do. And then, of course, make sure you're following my partner here, Zack Kelberman, on Twitter at Kelberman NFL. Myself at Chad and Jensen. Stay tuned because we'll be back in the saddle tomorrow night, same time, 6:15 Mountain, 8:15 Eastern. Hopefully there will be a little something new to talk about tomorrow, Zach, because again, we are literally 1 week away from legal tampering opening up and then free agency opening on the 18th. So things are going to start coalescing. I'm hoping maybe we get some news this week of perhaps a homegrown guy getting re-signed, getting extended. We'll see. But until then, Zach, have a good finish to your weekend. We'll talk again tomorrow night, bro.
You too, Chad, everyone else. Yeah, this is where things start to ramp up this week. It's going to be exciting. I would anticipate more Broncos rumors coming out. We'll be first to report and share it with you guys. So we're looking forward to it.
Appreciate you, Terry. Love Thank to you, the Terry. Women. Amen.
Yes,
Brian, that's undecided. Probably just us two for now. We'll talk more about it tomorrow night, though, guys. Thanks again, as always. For Zack Kelberman, I'm Chad Jensen. We'll talk to you tomorrow night, 6:15 Mountain, 8:15 Eastern.